And it's good morning for you, Claire, and anyone else joining from your geography. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation to join us and speak about your book. As most of you know, we run a book club internally for our coaches, and we pick up one book every month, break that into equal number of chapters and pages, and we kind of meet every Saturday to discuss about what you have read and kind of explore deeper. And the title attracted us, and we got some strong recommendation about the book. I think Shankar, Srina, they are all on the call, and of course, like Anand said, for me it was just the title of the book. There's so much in it. So the human part, there is a TED talk by Dr. Atul Gawande, who say it's time to heal medicine field, right? Sometimes I feel every profession is facing that existential challenge, and I hope coaching is not, but some practices we also observe, we get that out. So that human side is something that leaders cannot lose, coaches cannot lose. We want to leave the space for you, Claire. This is your next 1 hour. Feel free to play with it. And thank you very much once again for joining. And our friends here, especially Anupama, I've requested her to take the lead and handle all the questions. She's currently leading for us even the platform of the book club. So greatness is thrust on Anupama to do the honors. Brilliant. Thank you once again. Thank you everyone who's joined and be part of this program. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for reading the book. It's just me today. So I wrote the book with Lucia Baldelli, who's another master certified coach. And we wrote it for lots of reasons. One was that Lucia was on the journey from being a PCC coach to an MCC coach. And there seemed to be lots of learning in the learning that we were doing together that needed to be shared with the world. So we started off by deciding to call it Growing into Mastery. We bought the domain growingintomastery.com. And really quickly in writing it, we realized that we didn't like the word mastery because it was a power word. So there were two big reasons really for writing it. I think one is that we can get very worthy as coaches. We learn this amazing stuff and then we want to communicate that at the same time as facilitating someone else to do some good thinking. But what happens is it makes us sound as though we're more expert than them, accidentally. We use coaching language. We don't use our normal language. We use special language. And suddenly there becomes a power difference between the coach and the person that we're working with. There's also something about some coaches becoming gurus, so I'm very wise. But as soon as that happens, there's a power differential between us because you're giving me power that I don't deserve. So if you think I'm a guru, my task in the next hour is to stop you thinking that anymore. Because I am just an ordinary human being, as are we all. And I think that's really important to remember in this amazing work that we do, that it's very special and it's not very special at all. So that was one of the reasons. And the other thing that was interesting for me was that I published Simplifying Coaching in 2020. And since then, I've had thousands of messages from people around the world saying, we think Simplifying Coaching is fantastic because it helps us to get to the heart of what coaching really is. And some of those people, quite a lot of those people say, and it's really hard to do. It's really hard to work more simply. So part of the purpose of writing The Human Behind the Coach was to think about what is it that we need to do differently that allows us to put down our clever and really start working in partnership with somebody else. So since both the books were published, I have done a lot more work on myself around coaching presence using improv training. So improv is a form of drama, really, where you have to learn to step in and speak when you don't know what you're going to say. It is a very awesome and amazing way of letting go of the control that some of us like to have in the coaching space. So for me, there's something about being in control, holding the conversation, but not being in control. So we're being in control. We're not out of control, but we're not the leader of the conversation, because it's not our conversation to be the leader of. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a bit about some things that aren't in the book, because I think that's always great. Because if you've read the book, you don't want me to say things that are in the book. And if you haven't read the book, you'll be learning some stuff anyway. So that's all good. So there's no assumption, whoever said they hadn't read it, that Anant, it's all right. You're okay here. It's safe. Also, there's nothing worthy in what I'm going to say. So it's like, not like there's anything you won't understand. It may be that during this hour, I do a short coaching conversation with one of you to demonstrate some of this stuff. And if that's going to happen, perhaps you can think about whether you've got something to think about that you would be willing to think about in this public space with me coaching you. We'll do a whole coaching session in about 7 to 10 minutes if we decide to do that, but we'll see how we get on. And we're going to have space and time as we go through this to stop. You can put questions in the chat, which Anupama will kindly manage because you've been volunteered.
Sure. It's a golden opportunity.
Oh, well, thank you. The first thing that I want to say that's brand new, I think, is that for you to be you, if I'm coaching you, for you to be you, I need to be able to be me. So for the person who's come to you for coaching, can we make sure we're all on mute, please? For the person who's coming to me for coaching, for them to be able to be themselves in this space, I need to be able to be me. And we often think that we can't show up. We can't bring ourselves into the conversation. That's what we sometimes assume. We shouldn't bring all of us into the conversation because the conversation isn't about us. But unless we are human in the conversation, why will they be? So that means that we're showing up as the slightly broken person that we all are. We're showing up as the not quite fluent person that we all are. Timothy Clark, who wrote The 4 Stages of Psychological Safety, which some of you have clearly read, he says that the person who is perceived to have the power has first mover obligation to be vulnerable. The person who's perceived to have the power has first mover obligation to be vulnerable. That's us. And for all of us, that will be different. How we show up as slightly vulnerable will be different. So for me, whereas in the UK, I don't know what it's like where you are, but we often say that if you're going to work with a customer, you should be slightly better dressed than they are. For me now, I'm slightly less well dressed than they are because that's part of my first mover obligation to be vulnerable. If something has gone wrong in the morning on the way to the coaching session, I might share that lightly, because what I want more than anything else in this coaching conversation with this person is that they do not think I'm perfect, that they don't think I'm sorted, and that they do think that just like them, I am a human being. Because otherwise, we might as well be an AI bot. Because AI bots can ask really great questions. We need to show up as the human, the person who's, you know, who hasn't had a smooth and easy life, the person who is the human being. So that's the first thing. It starts with us and it ends with us. And no, we don't talk endlessly about ourselves, but we do need to show up as a human being, because that is going to really help. I can't believe that you've come to spend an hour with me, and I'm going to tell you these things that are so simple and yet so deep. So the second one is, please speak normally. When you speak the language that is called coach, the person that you're with doesn't understand what you're talking about, probably. I host a walk for coaches close to where I live. It's just a social thing, no selling, just fun. And we go on a Saturday, and we went last Saturday, and afterwards we went to a cafe for lunch. And one of the people who was there is quite new to coaching. And she said, do you know, when I coach real people, excuse the shorthand, when I coach real people and not coaches, they don't understand what I say. And I said, that's because you're not speaking English. And we had a really good conversation about the danger and the risk of getting all of your coaching hours through peer coaching and reciprocoach when you're only coaching coaches. Because when you only coach coaches, you don't learn how to coach ordinary people. You learn how to coach coaches. Because she said, when I say to people, what do you need to acknowledge? They don't know what I mean. And I said, say, is there anything you need to say to yourself? And she said, when I say, I wonder what your limiting beliefs are, I said, they don't know what you're talking about. Ask them or say to them, it feels like you keep falling over the same thing. So we decided that we were going to write a book, which was the English Coach English Dictionary. And then all of you are going to pay £1,500 or $1,500 each to come on my course, where I'm going to teach you to translate. Don't worry, I'm not going to do any of those things, but you're getting the meaning, right? We need to be normal, and we need to be different, and we need to not be annoying. I'm getting lots of nods. And we need to sound like we are not accidentally judging the people we're coaching. And that's the one which needs, I think, a lot of attention. Because I think we accidentally tell the people we're coaching off. We tell them off because of what we say, by accident. So I know that there's a lot of people here who are in the ICF. I think probably other coaching bodies are also present in the room today. But there's a thing, isn't there, called establishing the coaching agreement, or contracting, or designing the alliance, where at the beginning of the work today, we work out what we're doing, how we're going to do it, and how we're going to know we've done it. And then we start doing the work. And really quickly, it might be 3 minutes, it might be 10 minutes, it goes. And the thing we'd agreed isn't the thing that we're doing anymore. And we go, oh dear. And then what we do is we recognize that, and we say to the person we're coaching, at the beginning, we said we were going to do this. And now we're not. And suddenly we've made them feel a bit judged. I know you don't sound like that when you say that, but you get what I'm trying to say. So there's something about not making the people that we're coaching wrong. There's something about making them right. So if you want to take one thing away from the book, and one thing away from this conversation, it's chapter 12, which is about using recordings for reflective practice. You don't know what you do. You know what you think you do. But what you think you do and what you do may be very different things. So watching recordings and noticing partnership and noticing how the conversation is moving and passing between you is a really good piece of development. And I would encourage you all to do that. You do not even need to measure your skill against any kind of competency framework. All you need to do is to say, are we working in partnership? When I speak, are they ready? And have they taken the question from me while I'm still talking? And should I learn to stop? Because you lovely coaches, you've learned to ask questions so brilliantly that people will pick up your question before you get to the end of it. There are a number of reasons for that. One of them is they were in the room when you came up with the question. So they do kind of know the context in which your question is emerging, because your question is emerging from what they're saying and they said it. So your question is likely to make sense. So one of the things that we can do to be more human and more simple in our coaching is watch when they pick up the question and stop talking straight away. Otherwise, this is what happens. Here is a transformational question. The thinker goes, wee, and the coach goes, and now I'm going to explain to you for the next 3 minutes why it's transformational. By the time I finish explaining this to you, why I've asked it and why it's transformational, you will have completely forgotten what I said that made you light up, and we will be completely out of flow because you will have completely stopped thinking because you have been listening to me. And then you say to your mentor coach or your supervisor, I don't really understand why coaching is so hard work and why we keep having to kind of start again. We have to start again often because we have stopped them thinking by talking too much. You are not commissioned or paid for words. You are commissioned or paid for them to do some really great thinking. So we need to avoid, I think, accidentally judging people. And that includes also accidentally interrupting their thinking. So I have a podcast called The Coaching In, and I've done a series of conversations at The Coaching In with Oscar Trimboli, who's in Australia. He wrote How to Listen. You may have heard of him. If you haven't, check him out. We hosted a conversation about listening a few weeks ago, and one of the audience, a coach, an English coach called Sue Finch, she said, I've suddenly realized what I need to do to be normal. I need to avoid unnecessary echoes. So, you know, when we learn about reflective listening and paraphrasing, so they say something and we offer that back. They know those things. So they say, I was born in Bangalore. And you go, so you were born in Bangalore? And they go, yeah, I know that. That's what Sue Finch would call an unnecessary echo. What's more useful is somebody says, I was born in Bangalore and then my family moved to the UK and then we moved to this place and then we moved to that place. A better offer is, so it sounds like you've had a lot of moving. Can you hear the difference between the unnecessary echo and the empathic listening thing? So my first two things that I want to say to you are, it's all about you and speak normally. So let's just check in. Let's hear from a few people. What insights have you had so far? And what questions do you have? Let's hear from 3 people. What insights have you had so far, and what questions do you have?
Please
I can
raise
share
your hand.
mine.
Sure, go ahead.
Sure, I can share my insight. The most latest one, which you said that we paraphrase, rephrase, and the echo, which you mentioned. Yes, and the pressure we take on ourselves to prove that we are hearing you, we are present. See, I'm hearing you.
Yeah. See, I'm hearing you, and I'm going to tell you that for such a long time that you're going to stop thinking. It cancels out the benefit. They do need to feel heard, but they can feel heard in lots of different ways. In our coach training, one of the things we do is get people to reduce the amount of word they offer back. And actually what happens is somebody who offers back one word as a question that's deep often is said to be to have heard better than somebody who says the whole lots and lots of words. Thank you, Malgazata. It hit me about the subtle judging while trying to recontract. If you can just think about, let me not judge, because we know you're not intending to judge. I absolutely get that. The challenge is that sometimes it can be heard as judging by them. So let's have hands up. Let's have 2 questions. Anyone got a question? Okay, we won't have any questions.
I have one, Claire. I was just wondering, as you said, right, I'm on my ACC journey, about to just give the exam. And as you rightly said, this ICF wording sometimes, right, like you just wonder. And I have seen the difference while working with some of the people who are not coaches, and the language does matter. So what are the different ways where we can just see that, okay, these competencies are there, we're following that, but there are alternate ways to just find it out, how to ask things. I'm sure the PCC and all, they know how to go ahead, but for the beginners, any suggestions on the language, what we can work upon?
Be human, stay in the rules and break the rules. So for me, so I work with people up to MCC. Okay, this is the ICF competencies. So it's a picture. Can you see that? That picture is all of the ICF competencies in a picture. And as long as you do these, you're doing great work. That means that you know when you're starting the work, that you work out what you're doing, you do it, and you end in partnership. And you do that in a way that has good presence, a good mindset, and good trust. And that's it. Good beginning, messy middle. So as you go from ACC to PCC to MCC, you get more competent about dealing with the messy middle. So a good beginning, a messy middle, and an end in partnership. So one of the things that I've just demonstrated is I've just checked in with you to see what insights you've had and what questions you have. When we check in coaching, everything changes because we stop being the leader and we start being the partner. So just being aware of that is a really useful thing. I'm just going to mute. Oh, yeah. Great question, Anupama, and good luck.
Thank you.
But just the more you think about the competencies, the less natural it will be, and the more odd it will be for the person that you're coaching. So be normal. And our language will change, because one of the things that I love about partnership is that if you see me coach one person it will be different from when you see me coach someone else, because we work out together what we're doing in this conversation. So there'll be a clearness about it, but there'll also be a difference about it that I think is really important.
Yeah.
So check in, which is what I've just done. Let me just talk about a couple of other things, and then we'll see if we might do some coaching. There's something for me about this coaching space being safe. That is not for you to decide. We can never say to somebody, this is a safe space, because we don't know what's safe for them. We only know that we hope it is. We think it is. We've done everything we can to make it be, but actually it's for them to decide. So no, coaching is not a safe space unless they decide that it is. So there's something, I think, for me about asking them what needs to happen for this to feel safe enough for us to do some good work here. Then they'll start to feel safe. And that might be about the courage to acknowledge difference. So I recognize that I am in the UK, I am racialized white, and I am privileged. I would say that to you if I was coaching you, many of you, because we're coming from different parts of the world. We've got different life experiences. We need to acknowledge the difference for it to be safe enough here. And then we agree together what safe enough is. But I can never make it safe fully. And I can never tell you it's safe because it's not mine to say. So the other thing I think about being human in coaching is the person I'm coaching needs to be able to walk away and say they do not want to do this work with me. And if they can't, then we may not really be able to do proper work together. They've got to feel that they've got permission to not be here. And I know that some of us, if we coach in organizations where it's been commissioned by a third party and they've been told they have to have this many sessions, that person may not feel that they can show up safely. And the coaching won't work in the same way that it would work if the person had chosen to come and knows that they can choose to not be there at all, or they can choose to leave the partnership. So there's something about our vulnerability, which Lucia and I talk about in the book. There's something about their vulnerability, but there's also something about really giving people permission to not be in the room if they don't want to. And that requires a huge amount of courage from you, particularly if you need the money you're earning from this coaching piece of work to pay for your food shopping. But otherwise we're pretending, and when we're pretending, we're not being real, and when we're not being real, we're not being vulnerable, then they're not being vulnerable, and it's a game. If we want to do really good work with people, we have to let them find a way for it to choose how safe it is for them, to be safe enough for them to do really good work. And we need to name early if we have a concern. So one of the things I've been playing with, and I don't think anyone on this call will probably have heard me talk about this before because it's kind of new. My dad was made television programs, and they called them outside broadcasts, so not in the studio. So they'd take the film crews to places. And he said that that he was taught that if you are filming in a room, you have to show the exit because it makes the viewer feel more comfortable when you can see the exit. I think we need to show the exit when we start working with people. So, for example, I might say to you, let's work out together whether that's something that we can explore together in coaching, or it might be something that you need to take elsewhere. So we'll start to do some work and we'll see how we get on. And if it's not coaching, then you can take it. Then we'll work out where you can take it. Can you see that before you start doing the work, you've already set up the exit? That can really make a difference to how safe somebody feels. And it also means that if it's not coaching that's for them, we can find a much more collaborative, kind and human way of saying, do you know, this thing is probably not for coaching, it's probably for something else. So safety and courage kind of can connect together. And I think that that is really important, as is the whole thing about boundaries and being really clear about what we can do in the space and what we can't do in the space in a normal way, in your normal way of using language and not using weird language that makes them think that you're something that you're not. So, how are we doing? Anant, you're nodding.
You're making us think. I'm writing down these key points. Very interesting.
So it doesn't matter that you hadn't read the book, did it? So what's the most significant one you've written down so far?
I think this idea of giving permission to walk away from the coaching journey, I think, like you said, it's scary in some way. It creates a question for self if I'm not worthy of being the coach that I ought to be. So it's an interesting question. It makes you more human, I think, more vulnerable.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. Let me tell you how I learned this, because it was funny. Well, it wasn't funny at the time, but it is funny now. So before COVID, I used to coach almost always faced in person, sometimes online, but mostly in person. And I had a coaching room. And this man came into the coaching room and he sat down, and I think, I might be fantasizing now, but I think he went, ugh. He definitely looked away. He turned his whole body away from me. That is just the kind of experience when we are not a confident coach, when we'll just try and do the work and we'll try and do our best. But what happens is we end up doing all the work and he ends up not doing any. And it was so, his feelings were so loud that I had to do something. And so that makes him a great teacher for me. And I said to him, because it was really obvious, I said, you don't have to be here if you don't want to be, you know. So that was a really good example of naming what is. So in the systemic world, they say acknowledge what is. That was a way of acknowledging what is. You know, you don't need to be here if you don't want to be. So then he just looked at me and I said, it feels as though there's an awful lot of things going on. I said, you can go if you like. I'm really happy for you to leave. If you leave, we will work out what we're going to say to the person who commissioned the coaching. Not I will have to go and tell the person who commissioned the coaching that I didn't do a very good job with him or that he was a very bad person. We'll need to work out what we're going to do. So he still sat there. So he just looked at me and I said, remember, everything here is confidential. I said, I wonder whether you need to say some things before we do any work. Because you seem to be, it feels like you're carrying a load of stuff. Well, he was very free to tell me what he was thinking. And that took about 30 minutes of a 2-hour coaching session. At the end of the 30 minutes, I said, is there anything else you need to say before we start doing the work? And he went, no, I can do it now. And at the end of the session, he said he wished he hadn't wasted the first 30 minutes. But that's okay. But what I learned from that was, it's really easy for us to take responsibility when they're not happy. And we then end up working more. We need to say what we see without judging and not take responsibility for making the thing okay. Because if I'd just gone into the coaching, I would have done more than half the work and it wouldn't have been useful to him at all. But that takes an enormous amount of courage because it was a contract with an organization. It was with him. It was all those things were all at risk. But, you know, sometimes in service of us doing good work, we have to take a risk. And it's not as safe as we'd like it to be, but it is about partnership. So that takes humanity, that takes compassion, it takes courage, it takes all sorts of things. So for me, that's a really important thing. Because everything we do is about partnership. And when we overwork, they underwork. And when we overthink, they underthink. This is a conversation where I am facilitating the processing of somebody else. That's all I have to do. And there is art in that, but I don't need to show all my art in every conversation. I need to show as much art as is necessary in this conversation for them to feel seen and heard and felt and get new insights into their own stuff. So, how are we doing? Which Subrami thinks is a super question. That is my favorite check-in, Subrami, because it's English. It's just very plain, ordinary language that people understand. Rather than, let me just check in with the work. And they go, what? Priya.
Hi, Claire. I'm in my ACC journey, and I heard you say, you don't really tell someone that this is a safe space. So I'm wondering, how do you convey that it is a safe space without actually saying it?
Ask them. What do we need to do to make this space safe for you, or safe enough for you?
And could I ask another question, please?
Yeah.
So still very early in my practice, so I hope this is okay. Do we do that right at the start? How do we make this a safe space for you?
You'd probably do it at the start of the relationship. You might do it at the start of every session, but can I give you my top tip on your coaching journey, Priya? You will have 10,000 questions about coaching. This is the answer to nearly all of them. Almost every question we ask about coaching is actually the question we need to be asking them. Almost always. And that makes it harder and easier at the same time. Malgorzata, hello.
Hello. Thank you very much. It's been so enjoying so far. A question. I have two, if I may.
Yeah.
I'm Polish, and I'm thinking about coaching in 3 languages. I speak 5, but do you think there is something meaningful that can come up with the multilingual kind of coaching activity? I'm saying, because sometimes when I will probably not use the word that you would expect me to use in English, for example, like a French person wouldn't expect me to use this kind of question. And I think that can really give a new perspective. I was wondering what's your take on that. And I adore that you are standing. I kind of tried to do it with, but then I see people sitting, and I feel we are not equal. But I think it's so powerful. But I don't know what is your take on introducing standing in the coaching space? Thank you.
I never coach sitting down when I'm online. I always coach standing up, because there's a lot more. We can use movement as part of the work, and it's very normal. So I don't need to say anything. I can just use movement as part of the work. If I'm face to face, I will almost always invite them to stand at some point, because they will almost always have said something about moving in how they said what they said. So, for example, I heard somebody say this to me. I've been sitting on this problem for a long time. Did you hear the word? So I said, okay, so before we work out what we need to do, why don't you stand up? Can you hear that? That's a really normal segue in. I've forgotten your name because you've disappeared off my screen, but I'd love you to come to the Coaching In podcast. I'm getting a whole lot of coaches together who are coaching in 2 or 3 or 4 languages, and it would be great for you to come and share what you're learning. One of the things that I want to say about coaching in other languages is absolutely what you said, which is sometimes offering it back in a different way can be really useful and insightful. There's also something when I'm coaching somebody whose first language isn't English and they go, I'm really stuck with this thing, can't think of the word in English. I just say it in your own language, because saying it out loud in their own language will unlock it. I never needed to know what it was anyway. We need to know and understand a lot less than we think we do in coaching. Sometimes people who are coaching in English, who have paid to learn English, both feel delighted and also feel that they've used a lot of money in learning to learn English. When I say, just because you paid to learn English doesn't mean your English needs to be good in the session, because your questions do not need to be perfect. They do not need to be well refined. You just need to say as much as you need to say for the person to keep moving and keep being in flow. So yeah, lots to say, but I would love you to come on my podcast. So if you send me a message via LinkedIn, if you would be up for that, that would be great. I'm getting somebody from South America and various other people. Heidi might be going to coach in her second language. That's interesting. So we got 15 minutes left, and I wonder whether we can do a 5-minute coaching demo. And I just need to tell you that there won't be time to do a big debrief, but I hope that it'll give you a little bit of a sense of what coaching in the way that we described in the book looks like. And I think we have a volunteer, Gotchi. Is that right, Anupama?
Yes, I was about to say.
Perfect. So if you can come off mute. How do I say your name?
Gucci.
Gotchi.
Gotchi.
Hello, Gotchi. Nice to
Hi,
meet you.
Claire. Thank you.
Where are we in the world?
Nigeria, Lagos.
Okay, nice. So I'm going to invite you to do quite a lot of this inside your head, because then we'll be able to do some really good work. And it will be safe for you. Is that okay?
That's fine.
So
That's good.
in your head, just think about the question that you want to explore with me in this 5 minutes. Have you got it?
Yes.
Do you want to say what it is?
How can I be a coach that transforms lives?
What a beautiful question. So in the 5 minutes we've got, Gochi, which bit of that is the bit we need to explore together?
Transforms lives.
Transforms lives. I'm guessing you've thought about this a lot before. So
Yes.
I wonder, what do we need to do differently right now to get you into new thinking?
If I go with what I have heard you, some of what I've heard you say today, it's probably not me transforming lives as it is them getting value and then being able to transform their lives.
Absolutely. And
So-
as you say that out loud, how does that feel?
It's almost like a burden, like it kind of frees me up. So I'm not like, am I doing it right? Am I sure? It's more like focus on yourself and leave them and let the process work it out.
Nice.
Yeah. So it kind of frees me up.
So now you're a bit freed up.
Mhm.
What is it we need to do in the next 3 minutes to keep that moving?
What do we need to do to keep this moving?
That commitment to letting them do the transformation.
Mhm. Just ask open-ended questions to find out what they would want.
Mm.
And dance with them. When you know what they want, ask, follow their line, their thought process, and just stay there.
Dance with them.
Mhm.
How does that make you feel when you say that?
Good, because I'm not the one choosing the dance steps. I'm not
Nice.
even the one deciding how to dance. It is wherever they go, I go with them. And however they take the steps, I try to follow them.
So what do you know now that you didn't know when we started?
It's not about me doing the work, doing the transformation. So relax and hear what they want to do and follow them. Yeah.
Is that enough for now?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, it is.
Do you have a copy of The Human Behind the Coach, Goshi?
No, I don't.
If
Not yet.
you connect to me on LinkedIn,
Mhm.
send me your postal address. I'll send you one to say thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Pleasure. So if you want to take Goshi off spotlight, that'd be great. Let's take 3 or 4 minutes just to notice what you noticed about that. But I want to just pick up something which is about flow. So my job as the coach was to get Goshi in flow, was to help her to work out what she was thinking about and then to support her to be in flow. And once she's in flow, she continues in flow. And then I did exactly what she's describing, what she's going to do, which is to dance with her as she did the insights. So what did you notice? And what questions did that evoke for you lovely people who were watching? If you want to put your virtual hand up, then we'll know.
Can I?
Yeah.
Stina. So I think I like the way you said which bit of that we need to explore together today. You're trying to focus on exactly which piece of thing you want to discuss.
That is my favorite coaching question. And I don't believe in learning questions, but I think it is my favorite because when you say which bit of that, you can ask that a lot of times and they don't think you're repeating. So which bit of that? I think what we often do is we accidentally try and do too much work and it's too big and we get a bit overwhelmed by it and so do they. So there was a moment in that conversation that I had with Goshi right at the beginning, which in the ICF terms was in the middle of the coaching agreement when she got an insight. If somebody gets an insight in your coaching, you've done an amazing piece of work. And then if they get more, that's also great, but you've already done an amazing piece of work. So for me, getting the right sizing right, that's in Simplifying Coaching. And there's lots of free stuff on the internet if you want to find out more about it. But getting the right sizing right at the beginning gets them in flow. And part of that is making the work the right size for the time without telling them that we haven't got a lot of time and that their problem is very big, which is what we might naturally do. Oh, you want to talk about world peace? We can't possibly talk about a big thing like world peace in this very short time. And they go, no, we can't, can we? Whereas if you are normal, so we've got 15 minutes. Which bit of world peace would you like to talk about, to think about? And how will you know in 15 minutes time that we've moved your thinking forward? All of that doesn't require us to ask them what they know already, and it gets them forward moving in their inside. We don't need to know what's happening inside, but we do need to know that something is happening inside, and that's our job.
Thank you.
Shankar, hello.
Hi, Claire. I could see that since you were standing, it was easier for you to dance with Kirsty, right? So that's something that really stood out. And my question, I think you answered it. It's also about how did you realize when to ask the feeling question? Is it when you saw her have some insights, or how did you?
Do you think I can go back 5 minutes in time? For me, there's something in any conversation about paying attention to thinking and paying attention to feeling. And I guess I noticed that we hadn't done feeling. So that was probably quite a good thing to notice. I honestly, the moving makes such a big difference. And one of the reasons it makes a big difference is that when you are in TV presenter mode, which is when you're in the middle of your screen and you're quite big, you're actually really close to them. We did an in-person presence training. We also do it online, but we did it in person last week. And we got people to sit face to face in the room like you sit face to face online. It's terrifying. You're so close. So there's something about moving that softens the relationship. Also, this is the power seat. So your line manager, when they are online with you, will sit in the middle of the screen with quite a big head. So if we can soften in coaching, that coaching isn't like other conversations, so I'm going to just be a bit different. So your line manager also probably doesn't stand up. When people sit down, they have a sitting down kind of conversation. So if I'm sitting and you're sitting, we will go slower. If I'm standing and you're sitting, there's probably more pace because I will move a little bit. So you'll have noticed that I was probably moving quite a lot as you were talking, Goshi. And that just helps the flow of the conversation. Great question, Shankar.
Thank you.
So I could talk all day and we have 4 minutes left and it's the evening for you and you probably have other things to do. So can we take me off spotlight so I can see everybody? I can do it myself. Let's just hear from a few people in a moment. What one thing that you're going to take away from this? But I just want to say one more thing before I finish saying what I want to say. And that is, it starts with you. The coaching relationship starts with you and it's not about you. but you have to show up in the space in order for them to show up in the space. And when we're anxious and when we're trying to do it properly, sometimes that will impact the relationship that we have with the person that we're coaching. And that won't always be good news. So, Shaila, I'm taking away the need to feel courage as a coach. And do you want to know how to practice that? Do anything that's not coach training.
I feel validated right now.
That's great to hear. Find something which will take you courage and go do that. So for me, it's paddle boarding, which is an English sport where you stand on a surfboard in a river and basically fall in. There are so many places we can learn courage. You can't learn courage in a classroom. You've got to learn it in real life. So forget the coach training for courage. Go out and do something that scares you. And that's where you're going to do your best learning. And then you'll bring that into the coaching space. The more scary, the better, I have to say. But somebody last week told me that they had gone skiing in the Alps. No, somewhere in the world. They'd gone skiing and it was so terrifying that they thought they would die. Probably not that scary, but quite scary is great. Shaila. So who else? Vasu, what are you taking away?
Hi, Claire. I have a question. Can I please ask a question?
Please.
Okay. I'm just on my ACC journey right now. And my question is, how important is the coach's body language during a coaching session?
Well, for me, there's a difference between body language and just ordinary movement. So I'm not really into the idea of body language and what it means or doesn't mean. But what is useful is that you're normal. Is that you be a version of normal that's normal for you and normal for them. So, for example, if I'm with somebody who's very movie, then I will move a lot. If I'm with somebody who's very still, I will still move, but I'll move less because my movement relationship with them is different because I'm responding to what I see. But also, if I'm with somebody who's really movie, sometimes I need to pay attention to be a little bit stiller so that I don't make them even more movie than they were. So there's something about the dance and there's something about not escalating the conversation into something that's not useful. So my number one thing is be normal, which is kind of my number one plea to the coaching community, is let's be normal. Let's talk normally and do normal things in the most extraordinary way. So thank you all for coming. Happy to connect on LinkedIn. If you connect to me on LinkedIn, I've got something I'm happy to offer you as a gift. Goshi, you're going to send me your address. And Malgorzata, you're going to tell me if you're willing to come to the coaching in for a conversation. If you want to talk to me more, I've got an open house at the Coaching Inn, which is my podcast, all day tomorrow, which is from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. UK. So lots of time. You can get the link to come and we can pick up the conversation there if you'd like to come. Just connect on LinkedIn. So we'll take a photo towards the end. Please stay. So Anupama wants to take a photo. So can everybody come off, put their cameras on if they are able to? Thank you. Oh, look at those lovely faces.
And while we are doing that, thank you so much, Claire, for this session. I mean, that 5 minutes magic, whatever I've read in the book, could just feel it, experience it. So looking forward to have more interactions with you. Thank you so much for being here.
Great. Well, thank you for inviting me. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Yeah.
So where you are, there you are.
Yeah.
It's over. Okay, she's done it. So happy to connect on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for a little warning. If you've written down 3 pages of notes, please do not use them in your next coaching session, because the person you're coaching will feel rather overwhelmed. So just take one thing. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.